Did you always want to be an accountant?
That is a very good question. Kaniysa, I'd probably have to tell you this story.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of STADIO Speaks, where we dive into inspiring stories, insightful advice, and everything in between to empower students and lifelong learners. I'm your host, Kaniysa, and today we have a very special guest joining us. None other than Ishak Kula, the CFO of STADIO. Ishak has built an incredible career in finance, rising to one of the top leadership positions in our institution. Today, we're not just going to explore his professional path, but we'll also learn more about the man behind the title. So, whether you're looking for career inspiration, insights on financial literacy, or just a fun conversation, stay tuned and let's dive in.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence on our podcast, Ishak. So maybe introduce yourself, tell us your title so the audience knows, and then we can just dive into the questions.
Kaniysa, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to sit with you today and share a bit about me. I'm Ishak Kula, the Chief Financial Officer of STADIO Holdings and also the CFO of STADIO Higher Education, which is a big business in the STADIO Holdings group. I am obviously a chartered accountant by profession. Studied at back in the day in Johannesburg. Started my studies in 2005 with RIE, which later then became UJ. And I've always been in the finance world. I started with STADIO in January this year, so I would say I'm still probably the new kid on the block. Yeah, I've been in the job for just over 10 months now, and loving the position.
Did you always want to be an accountant?
That is a very good question. Kaniysa, I'd probably have to tell you this story. I grew up in a very small town called Secunda.
Okay.
My dad is Turkish. He grew up in a small village in Turkey, probably 5 or 6 hours away from Istanbul, in a small little village with very basic needs were met, if I can put it that way. So I grew up very primitively. He came to South Africa for work and worked in the construction industry.
Okay.
My dad has a standard 5, Kaniysa.
Okay.
And it's an important factor because I think me being in education, it played quite a big role as to why I'm here today. He grew up, had a standard 5, came to South Africa to work. And I met my mom in South Africa, and she has a standard 8, so also didn't complete schooling. Yeah. But the one thing my dad always said to me when I was in school, he said it in Turkish, he said "oğlum," which is the Turkish word for son. He said, the one thing you're going to do is you're not going to work as hard as me. I was kind of laughed at him because I didn't know what he quite meant with it.
Yeah.
But his frame of reference was working hard meant you have to work with your hands. So he had it as, if you're in an office job, it's not as hard.
It's not like real work.
That's not real work. But it later informed so many things in my life because he said you have to go and study. With him realizing at a very young age how important education is, he tried to pass that on to me in his own language by making those assertions. So I'd always, in my own mind, realized I must go and study. The what, the when, the how was unclear. And when I did okay at school, didn't do too badly, but grew up very primitively. And when you get to grade 11 or then back standard 9, you have open days at schools, etc. And I was faced with the reality of making a decision to go and study, because my dad had pushed me down this road. And I said, okay, I'll study. I literally took my report and my subjects, and I had this thing called accountancy on there. And a friend and I said, okay, we're going to study, and it's going to be accountancy. And I decided to venture down that road because I was okay with numbers, and that was my frame of reference.
Oh, nice.
That literally was it. So my mate and I packed up our stuff, and off we went to Johannesburg. We left our folks, which was quite a big thing for us, coming from a small town, and went to study in Johannesburg. I would never forget this moment. I was in my first year in accounting, and someone said, "Do you guys realize you're going to become chartered accountants?" And I sat there and I looked at my friend and I actually didn't know what they were talking about. I sat there not realizing this journey that I was on to becoming what they called a chartered accountant. People said you're going to do articles and you're going to do all these things, and I didn't realize that. And I realized very quickly that I'm going to have to understand what that means. But that's how primitive my background was, with the frame of reference looking at my own parents. There was no guidance around what it meant. You know, internet wasn't a thing back then, so you couldn't really educate yourself in any way. And that's how my journey started to becoming a chartered accountant.
And what was your realization of what a chartered accountant is and who you're going to become? What was it like to realize that, okay, these are the steps I have to be? And when you realized what a chartered accountant was, what was like your frame of mind?
Kaniysa, admittedly, that realization only set in and it truly only crystallized for me probably when I started my articles. I needed to sign up with an audit firm to go and do my articles. That happened sort of in my third year, going into my fourth year, honours year. And I would never forget the moment walking down a corridor where the big audit firms had their own exhibitions to tell and educate, I suppose, the students what they were about. And I'd never forget this moment, walking down that passage, seeing this one gentleman with a jacket on, with a suit on, and this brand called KPMG. And I said, I want to be associated with that brand, and that's what I was going to do. And I signed up with them, and only really realized what it meant when I started working. My first year in articles was when this whole world had opened for me and it steered me on this path of realizing that what I thought was going to be, I'm going to sit behind my desk, I'm going to crunch some numbers, and that was it. You know, people, they're important, and I enjoyed the people aspect, but I wasn't going to work with people, is what I thought I was going to do, until that reality set in. And and it just propelled me to realize that in the finance world, there's this big thing, you think you're becoming a chartered accountant means you just work with numbers. I think the reality is you work probably 80 or 90% with people and 10% with numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what was your journey like from working in a chartered accountant company like KPMG and then transitioning into education? And how did you get to education?
That's a very good question. Kaniysa, I was always set once I entered KPMG. I enjoyed my journey so much there. I worked myself up to becoming a director when I was about 30 years old.
Nice.
And that was what I was going to do for a living. I wanted to stay with a firm. I always realized that I didn't want to just stay in the audit profession and just service audit clients. I always enjoyed the business, the broader business, and how the different moving parts fit together. So I'd ventured into other things. I helped with various projects within the KPMG world, various restructurings. KPMG back in the day had its challenges. You'd all remember the Gupta fallout and the SARS reports.
Yes.
And I stuck up my hand and said, I'm here to build and rebuild the firm with the team. And that was the journey I was on. Until one day an opportunity came my way that I wasn't looking for. Senior teams, the CEO and then the then COO of the firm had left KPMG and they joined a private group called the Bud Group.
Okay.
And that approached me for an opportunity to build a new division within that business. And I just couldn't say no to the opportunity. I had a fantastic time with the Bud Group then for 5 years until the opportunity came for higher education or STADIO. And how that had happened is I'd done a lot of work back in the day with the PSG Group.
Okay.
I'd looked at various acquisitions for them in the States and done various projects for them. Over the years, I've had the fortunate I've been in a fortunate position to work on many listed groups and have listed client experience. And when I had heard that the CFO of STADIO Holdings had resigned, I said this is a great opportunity to try and pursue. And what was particularly attractive for me was the fact that it was in higher education. I think, you know, it's a strange thing, Kaniysa. As you get older, you start reflecting more on life. I don't know, it was not a thing I used to do when I was perhaps in my 20s and as early 30s. But as you kind of grow a little older, sort of in my mid-30s, you start reflecting on, you know, things aren't just about money. They aren't just about getting a kick out of what you just purely do. But it's also, what do you add to society? Is there an alignment morally, ethically, with your own value system and what drives you? And the big thing for me was, with going back to what I said to you earlier, when I started reflecting on my education journey and how fortunately things have worked out, but looking at my mom and dad's education in particular, we had no education in our family. None of our generations were educated. And I just realized what STADIO was building. That dawned on me and solidified that aspect. And that was incredibly attractive, because I saw a very young business that was sort of getting out of its blocks and adding value to the greater society. And I wanted to be aligned with that because it resonated with me at a very deep and personal level. And that's how I realized it's an absolute no-brainer. If I was to be successful in the application process, it was a no-brainer to do it.
I love that. So what does a day in the life of a CFO look like for you?
Do you really want to know? So I think I'll answer probably that question in the following manner.
Okay.
Over the years, I've realized the importance of people. I think no matter how good you are as an individual, you must surround yourself with the best people and people in general. Nothing can work without people around you. And I've taken a great interest in mentoring and providing leadership to young individuals and to young people. And I think the one particular thing I always struggled with is perspective when you were young, right? So as you get older, you realize how important perspective is. The lens you view things through is based on your own perception and reality. But you need people that helps you give a different lens and to broaden your perspective. And therefore, I've always taken a keen interest to mentor and guide people, because often the things I think they struggle with are the things I struggled with. And therefore, bringing it back to your question, and then a key aspect for me every day is to be able to walk into this office and spend time with my teams. Some days more so than others, but my first thing I do in the morning is when I come in, I go and obviously greet my team, but I look each one in the eye just to see whether they're doing okay. And
as
a person, because it's very important, because the sum of the parts is what makes the finance function successful, and knowing your people is a critical one. And therefore for me is I'd always try and have a connection point with every single team member every single day, whether it's cracking a joke, looking them in the eye and asking them how they're doing, and to make sure you absorb what they're telling you and the way they say things, so that you can actually help them if there's a need. So typical day starts for me like that. I would do that, have touch points with my team, have a cup of coffee, catch up with some colleagues, and then I would get my day started. That's it.
Lovely. And then you touched on mentorship. Did you have anyone special in your life who mentored you and guided you? And maybe what is the importance of mentorship to young people who aspire to one day be CFOs?
Kaniysa, I probably in different timelines of my career had different mentors, and I do have mentors. In my KPMG days, there was one or two partners that meant the world to me. They had opened doors when I stuck up my hands, and given me the opportunities to flourish. So absolutely, I think that mentorship role is a critical one. I've been fortunate to have mentors in the likes of some of the CFOs of listed groups that I've done in the past. Till this day, I speak to them and have had the opportunity to not only work with them, but for them to counsel me, to give input. And it brings that, like I mentioned earlier, that own perspective. They bring a different perspective. So that to me is a key thing in my life. So that is critical. And until this day, my dad is a mentor. He might not have brought business acumen and his own experience, but he brings a different flair to my life. He's that dad that will go, nothing is too difficult to overcome. Don't worry about it. You'll always get it done, and just give it your best shot and give it your all. So I think mentorship is a critical one. I live by the philosophy of, if you fly alone, you die alone, right?
Yeah.
So you need people that are smarter and wiser, that can counsel you with different aspects that you struggle with in life. So my encouragement to any young professional or individual that wants to become not only a chartered accountant, but that's progressing in the sphere of education and wanting to become the best versions of themselves is, I always absolutely get yourself a mentor. Get someone that you look up to, that can provide you with perspective and a different lens of some of the challenges that you face in life. And I think it just helps you to be a lot more of a rounded individual. Yeah, so...
You keep touching on the point of you put up your hand so you can get opportunities for people to open doors for you. So I'd like you to elaborate a bit on how important it is to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kaniysa. If I again reflect on my own short career and making it tangible for anyone listening to this, it's critical that you always do your best, right? And to become a specialist in that area that you enjoy doing, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, you've got to be brave. You've got to be brave. There's a time in your life where you go, listen, I am comfortable with this, and you have to step outside that comfort zone. You have to go and say, I'm prepared to give that a shot. Make sure that you've got strong people backing you that can give you the guidance and the mentorship. But no doubt it played a fundamental role in my own life. If I often reflect on the opportunities that came my way, I could have just ignored them. And I can assure you, I wouldn't have sat here today. So being brave and being resilient is key, and sticking up your hand, and then being okay with making mistakes. You know, you need to be comfortable to say, listen, if I don't make it, I'll be okay. At least I tried.
Yes.
So to me, that's a philosophy and something I try and incorporate in my own work life, but also in my personal life, is to try and educate and teach my kids how important it is to give something a shot, regardless of how daunting it may seem.
And then what encouraging words would you give to students who aspire or envision to be CFOs, specifically CFOs at that?
I would probably say, going back to what is important for me, is you have to be resilient in this game. I think being a CFO is not only an honor and a privilege, but it does come with responsibility. So you've got to be resilient, because things are thrown your way where you need to make important and critical decisions. So not only those decisions need to be well informed, but you need to be confident. And at times you don't always have all the information, and you also have to trust this gut. And that's probably what I would say, is the combination of that should give you the opportunity to make good decisions. Trust your gut, but be resilient and be strong, and surround yourself with very good people so that you can make well and good and informed decisions. So that's probably what I would say to the younger CAs and or accountants aspiring to become a CFO.
Who is Ishak outside of work and finance?
Ishak outside work and finance is probably a very similar person to what you see today. But good question. I'm a very family orientated man. So I believe all the responsibilities that you typically have in a workplace. I believe the responsibility and the weight in my personal life is just as big, believe it or not. I'm fortunate to be a dad of 2 beautiful kids. I've got a daughter that's 3.5 and a son that's 15 months. And therefore, a lot of my time and investment goes into those 2 little young ones. So I spend a lot of time, every single free moment goes into those little 2 beings. Because I recognize the importance of molding these young minds into what we want them to become one day, right? So that character formation is such a fundamental piece. So outside work is my wife and my 2 kiddies. They are my be-all and end-all. And then I think the other big thing is also just, I think for me personally, outside work is to try and make sure you find a balance in life, right? And I always use the example, there's different points in your life where balance looks different to you.
Yeah.
So for me at the moment, balance looks, I make sure I train, and I think that's an important piece, because I think a healthy body, helps you with a healthy mind. And then, crunch it at work and do your best. And then my relaxation and outside of work is just my kids and my wife. I adore them, love them, and I love spending time with them.
I love that. Did you grow up as an only child, or do you have siblings?
I grew up as one of 4. I'm the eldest of 4. I have 2 brothers and a sister, Kaniysa, and they all live in a small town called Secunda, like I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, okay, nice. And then how were you growing up? Did you play sports? How was your childhood like with your siblings? Let's get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, so if I could, and if life allowed me, I would have ventured into the sport world. Sport was my life.
Okay.
So I did all sorts of sports, Kaniysa. I was a big soccer fan. I played a lot of soccer. My dad had connections with the Kaiser Chiefs, so I played soccer at varsity, schooling, etc. I've played soccer my whole life. But anything with a ball was my life. Whether it be cricket, I played tennis. I played a bit of rugby, not a big rugby player, but played rugby. And I was also an athlete. So I did the 100 meters and I did the 200 meters. Anything outdoors is what I did growing up. So I was rarely at home. So I actually always remember, I passed my matric exams because I started studying very late because I had all these other extramural activities. But again, it was a phase of one's life, but loved sports.
Which sports would you have done professionally if you could have?
Probably definitely soccer.
Okay.
Yeah, soccer I really loved.
Was it your
soccer.
first love?
It was my first love. Always enjoyed it. There was something about kicking a ball around, running around for 90 minutes, and playing with colleagues and friends and mates and stuff. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. And if there's one thing I could have done, it probably would have been that.
Nice, that's interesting. You could never predict what someone else's choice of career would have been when you constantly see them in a suit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
right.
Interesting. And then did you have any cultural activities or passions that you had as a child?
Kaniysa, so quite interesting you ask me that. This is probably where there's a bit of diversity in my history. I talked about my dad being Turkish.
Yes.
So my dad is obviously Turkish and Muslim, and my mom was a South African Christian Afrikaans.
Interesting.
So what was always fascinating when we talk about like these cultural things, so I grew up with a myriad of both cultures, but particularly the Turkish culture, which is driven by Islam. And I'd always understand and enjoyed that culture and background. So that kind of sat squarely in my DNA. So all those cultural nuances and everything that goes with it, the food, the people, etc., etc. So that's probably culturally quite an interesting and a unique experience, I think, that many people wouldn't be aware of. And I think what was quite interesting, Kaniysa, which I probably didn't say earlier, is my dad growing up Turkish, or my dad being Turkish and my mom Afrikaans, is my dad was always, he said to my wife, "Now you take care of the kids, And so she sent us to Afrikaans schools, etc. And it was quite fascinating when you talk about cultural dynamics, how the Afrikaans culture and the Turkish culture, not only are they worlds apart, religiously they're worlds apart.
Yes.
And I think how you grow and live is also quite unique. You know, but over time I think it's brought a different dynamic to who you are as an individual. But I think over time you morph into something that you believe you can resonate with,
Yes.
and that you believe is sound for your own family. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. We have a lot of distance learning students and audience, right? And seeing as though we're sitting with a CFO, how would you advise our DL community, since they're already like working community, how would you advise them to progress in their careers? And as a CFO, what are the traits and attributes that you're looking for to promote someone to get into a better position for them to grow in their career?
Kaniysa, that's a very good question. I think I'll probably take it back to, I think what's important when I look at recruitment and recruiting someone, and probably at the core of what I believe is key to someone's own ability, is I always say you recruit for attitude, right? The technical competence, I see it in my own sphere. You can be technically competent. You can get a textbook out. You can get the technical answers. That's the one part. But it's critical that someone has got the right attitude, the willingness and the eagerness to learn. That to me is critical. You must want to grow and excel. You must be prepared to make mistakes, meaningful mistakes within acceptable parameters, right? You need to consult when you make decisions, etc. But that attitude is key. Because with attitude comes, are you a right culture fit for any organization? And I think for any prospective employer, and certainly when I look at employing someone, those are the characteristics I look for. Is do they meet those requirements? Can they culturally fit in? Technically, I believe you should be able to do those things, because those are the things that you master on your own. You study, you learn the technical content. But now you need to bridge and make sure you also demonstrate the right attitude and the eagerness and the willingness to learn. That's probably some of the key attributes that I would look for.
And then post articles, is it important to further your degree for you to grow? Specifically in the field of like CA. Once you're a CA, is it important to maybe then go do like a master's and maybe have ambitions to do a PhD? Where would that take you in terms of like career if you were to expand or grow your degree? Is it important to even like study post articles?
Kaniysa, I'll speak to my own experience. I think it depends on where you probably see yourself eventually landing up in. I think if you want to land up in the academic world, I think it's important to stay relevant, which means you might need to do things like a PhD and a master's, etc. I think in the finance world, particularly in the career in the path I've chosen, I think staying equipped and relevant with changes in the broader market is an important one. I think staying up to date from a CPD, what we call continuous professional development, is important. But I don't think you need to further study another degree and the like to be able to become ultimately, let's say, if your goal is to become a CFO, to be able to do that. I think there are complementary things that might broaden your skill sets, which are the good things to have if you wanted to do an MBA. And so, but I don't think those are core and critical things you have to do to become a CFO. And therefore, I think the fortunate thing with our qualification is you get a broad sense of experience. But I'll frame it this way, is linked to what I said earlier, you must grasp opportunities in life. Because you can get two chartered accountants that have chosen very different paths. And it's those experiences, grabbing those experiences grabbing the bulls by the horn, that ultimately morphs you into a different individual. And that can either propel your career or it won't, right? So I think that's an important one. But I think linked to it for me, what's a very important one for individuals out there, and I think what's probably missing in my view, from the traditional, let's say, educational system, and particularly I think in the CA stream, is there's no education of how you work with people. So how do you actually work with people? How do you build things like emotional intelligence? Where does it come from? There's no course. When I was back at university and the like, there was no such things. So you do all the technical things, but no one teaches you how to work with people. You know, you do group work and all those things, but they pale into insignificance when you look at your overall experience. And I think what sets great leaders apart as being and growing you as a CFO, ultimately, I think is your capability and ability to work with people and to try and understand them and to make a difference in their lives. But that human piece and human capability is key.
And what advice would you give to like young students who are currently in matric and they've got all these career options to have to choose from? What are the perks of being a CA? And what could they possibly look forward to in the future if they were to choose the route of being a CA?
So I think what's quite we're quite fortunate in our profession and the career path is, I think if you have the CA stream gives you the capability to obviously understand numbers and understand broadly business. I think that's the beauty of it, right? Any economy thrives off business, and the beauty of the profession is it gives you a broad sense of how businesses work, what are the key drivers in a business, and ultimately what numbers spit out. Ultimately, it's also important to understand that. So I think that's the beauty of the qualification, is it gives you holistic business understanding, and therefore I think it opens a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities in life. If you've got that business acumen and business understanding, I think the career is a fantastic one, I must tell you. I think I've been fortunate in my own career and have been blessed in many ways. And I would advise anyone, if you enjoy business and working with people, that it's a phenomenal career. You're going to work hard, make peace with it.
Yes.
But it is a very rewarding career, not just financially, but otherwise. And I think that is something I live and I appreciate every day.
Okay, great. And then sitting here now, right? CFO of STADIO Holdings, CFO of STADIO Higher Education. What would you say to little Ishak if you were to look at him now and be like, look at how far we've made it? What would you say to him?
I would say to my little boy, be humble, stay humble. I think it's such an important thing in life, is to be able to stay true to who and what you are, to take the lessons of life, to take opportunities, grasp those, and run with them, but stay humble in the process. Gather people around you that can grow and walk this journey with you, because you're never alone. As they always say, behind a successful man is an even more successful woman. I think I would give that same advice to my little son, is harness and surround yourself with people that you love, that can support you in your own journey, but make sure you stay humble in everything that you do. That is key and probably the cornerstone of what's important to me as well.
And if you had the opportunity to walk your journey all over again, would you do it the exact same way?
Absolutely. It's a tough journey. It was a very tough journey, and then it continues to be a tough journey, right? I think one has further aspirations and things you want to achieve. We want to propel and grow this business, which is already successful, already even further. I would say, just give it your best shot every day. Do your best. And be tenacious and resilient, because I think that is critical in growing your own career path, but also things that I think makes you successful in life.
Love that. So, okay, last question. Now that you work for like a listed company and you're like a CFO of a listed company, how do you feel when you're able to stand in front of shareholders and like give good news that STADIO is like done well? Like, what is the feeling that you have?
Look, I'll probably start off by saying it's always nerve-wracking, right? I'm not going to lie. It's nerve-wracking. But I think when you're confident in the business's capability and you know the intricacies of stuff, then I think it gives one a lot of peace of mind, because then the conversation and what you present to your audience becomes a lot more natural. I think in my particular case, I think we are so blessed with an unbelievable business that's going to make so much difference in people's lives. And therefore, I think staying true to that core component and delivering that message to our shareholders is an important one, because I think we're really building something unbelievable. So it is nothing but a pleasure and a privilege to be able to share that message with our larger shareholder group. But I'll say I'm nervous in the beginning. There's a nervousness, but it comes from a good place. Yeah.
That's lovely, lovely. Yeah. Before we end off, we're going to jump into our segment that we call the This and That segment. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but you're only allowed to choose between A and B, and you have no time to think. Yes, that's the catch.
Okay.
You have no time to think.
Yeah.
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. Coffee or tea?
Unfortunately, coffee. I'd like to be a tea drinker.
Morning person or night owl?
Absolutely morning person.
Books or podcasts?
Podcasts.
Beach vacation or mountain getaway?
Bit of both. Probably now beach vacation, because my kids are small, so it's easier for them to enjoy themselves.
Yes, okay. Movie night or dinner out?
Dinner out.
Formal suit or casual wear?
Yes, both, man. I love suits and I love casual wear.
Okay. Yeah. Netflix binge or outdoor adventure?
Absolutely outdoor adventure.
Leadership role or mentorship role?
I think they go together. I don't think I can split leadership and mentorship. I think a good leader must also be a good mentor. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last one. Public speaking or working behind the scenes?
I think I'm more of a working behind the scenes, but I like engaging with groups of people. So
public speaking.
So yeah, not quite public speaking, standing up in front of an audience, but engaging.
Engaging is not part of the list.
Okay, it's not part of the list.
Yes.
But behind the scenes is also not the right answer, because that's not me.
Okay, fine. Let's go. I'll give you both for this one.
Okay.
Okay, and then thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and sharing your story. It was really lovely getting to know you better.
Thank you, Kaniysa. It's an absolute pleasure, and I want to say thank you to you. It was also good to get to know you a bit better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring and insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Ishak, for joining us today and sharing not only your expertise, but also your personal stories and wisdom with us. For everyone listening, don't forget that success doesn't happen overnight. And as Ishak has shared, it's about staying motivated, learning from every challenge, and embracing opportunities for growth. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and stay tuned for more empowering conversations here on STADIO Speaks. Until next time, keep learning, stay inspired, and remember, your journey is just the beginning.